Hello, hello, hello. Alex here again, flying solo. Birdman is still away. It's probably going to be that way for the next several weeks. We had a discussion about it, and it's taking, Birdman's gallbladder is better, but he's still having some trouble with his liver. It's going to take quite some time for him to heal, so till he gets his energy levels up, it's going to be me flying solo. I might be calling in some friends of the show to guest on with us. Might be doing a prototype that way, depending on how things go. If there's a bunch of E3 coverage, in early June, we may do more roundtable stuff, pull in some people, and see how that goes. But in the meantime, I'll be doing probably the next 2, 3, 4 weeks of shows, likely solo. Birdman will help curate the news as well as get some of his reviews in when he can. Maybe he'll pop in for a segment or two, but as far as the main hosting duties, that's going to be me. I am going to be talking with Aaron about doing some more loose cannon episodes. We've still got Earth vs. Stoop coming out on the show, and I'll talk about that at the end. I'm actually going to record the intro and news and weird news segments probably over the course of a few days here, so that it's not a long, arduous process of spending an entire day recording stuff, because even though the show may be an hour and a half long, that means it's 4 or 5 hours of recording to make sure that you get everything in that you need to get, plus editing and all that. So I'm going to do the intro today, probably news tomorrow, because there's still some more stuff to come in, but we are going to be back on our regular schedule. And I'll just sort of take a minute or two here and just explain sort of, what's been up. Obviously, if you're a listener within our area, like as far as regionally where we live, everything's gone into a lockdown mode, pretty much as bad as it was last April, if not worse, because they're afraid of jumping. Like we were getting like 4,000 cases or something like that at the worst per day in Ontario last spring, and they're afraid that we might be hitting like 30 or 40,000 because people aren't being good with the pandemic, and we haven't rolled out enough of our vaccines. I got mine last week. That was one of the reasons that, and actually the main reason why I was late getting things out, because I was running solo and I was hella tired. Well, energy came back, which is good. Arm is no longer sore. Feeling good. Glad I got my shot before the province ran out. I know that certain areas still have them scheduled for you, but they're not going to serve anybody for the next couple of weeks. And our lockdown has been extended to, I think, the 2nd or 3rd week of May now. Whereas it was supposed to end on May, was it 8th or something here? Let me take a look here. Yeah, May 8th it was supposed to be over. And now I think we're looking at May 22nd before. And they've also implemented things like checkpoints on the highway, going into regions and towns where they will check you and give you a ticket if you're traveling just because you say, hey, fuck it, I want to travel. You have to be giving a proper reason that the police believe you on. Like, are you going to work, whatever. And in here, like, my father moved in with me when he had a bad health scare a couple of years ago, and he has been the last couple of weeks staying with my grandmother, his mother, in the Toronto area. She's already been vaccinated. He's already been vaccinated. But just to sort of help her, because she lives alone, and it would make sense to have that extra person there. So he's got to check about, he was going to come back this week after being there for several weeks. He was going to find out whether or not he can even come home. What does it count? He doesn't work. He's retired, right? And it's not a case of, he's not going for pleasure or for just for the fun of it. He was taking care of and helping take care of his mother, but he's moving, or not moving, but he's going to be taking like the train home. Would that count? So we're going to double check on that. He should be able to get back, or he might just be staying a few more weeks there. And if that's the case, I mean, I'm isolating, then it's just me here anyway. We've had to do some logistical stuff because my brother's birthday is this coming Friday. And, the original plan was to do, a in-person meeting with me because I'm by myself right now, or if my dad was here. And the idea would be to have them, come in, say hi, here's a piece of cake, here's your birthday stuff, bye-bye. And same thing with my mom and grandmother in the other part of town. But it's going to be drive-by stuff, so it'll be already happened by the time this comes out. But my brother is actually going to come by early We're going to do a drive-by wave. Here's your present. Hold on to it till Friday, just so he can get everything done on Sunday, because Monday is when some of the more secure measures come into place, and you're sort of making sure that you got enough groceries. You don't have to go out if you don't have to. The likelihood of me getting regular coronavirus now is super duper low, because 75% effective to not have to go to a hospital, and if you do get it, yada yada, but the spread is still there, so I don't want to become a carrier and give it to somebody else. Same with my brother. He's got his vaccination at the same time I did. So, until we're all fully vaccinated, until all these variants go away, because that's the scary thing is, what if a variant isn't effective, and it takes up to 15 days for the vaccine to properly be absorbed into your bloodstream, you have your DNA and RNA, altered, and your antibodies built up, right? Well, it would only be just under that if my brother was coming to visit, and I'm still halfway at the in-between point of that, so it's not worth it right now. So I dropped into a mode of, I guess, COVID madness, in that I decided to watch some of the Hallmark murder mystery movies, and it's like murder mystery, but murder mystery TV movies. So think like Columbo and those other NBC movie of the weeks or ABC movies of the weeks back in the day, where they were the Umbrella series, where it was a series. You'd get like 3 or 4 a year, and they sometimes followed continuity where certain characters would, learn from the last episode or something, but they were 90-minute movies, right? So I knew that Hallmark made a few of them, and I knew in the past that their big thing was the Christmas movie market, that they have this insane factory that basically puts out terrible Christmas movies all the time for soccer moms. Well, I didn't realize that they have another channel, the Hallmark movie and mystery channel, which is different from the Hallmark channel, that's just dedicated to making like adaptations of, I can't judge the books because I haven't read them, but generally dime a dozen murder mystery books, and they follow the same exact formula. It's like they took Murder, She Wrote sort of as the idea, but it's always some woman in her 30s. It's not really 30s. A woman in her 40s or 50s who was famous in the late 80s or all throughout the 90s. Like the actress at least, solves crimes. She'll have a job that's has nothing to do with normal investigations. One's like owns a flower shop. One will be a matchmaker. One will be somebody who makes pies. Like it's all this simple crap like that. They'll team up with a hunky male detective or private investigator who's played usually by a Canadian character actor, and that's because every single one of these Hallmark movies and these TV series they make, every single one is filmed in either BC or Northern Ontario, but they pretend to be like Chicago or anywhere they want. I'm like, that looks like Sudbury, because it's Sudbury. And then they'll have a third actor, mostly male, because it'll be a father figure for this person, and it's usually somebody who is a lot more famous than they should be for being in this kind of a movie. Like Bruce Boxleitner, who you'd know from a lot of stuff back in the day in like Babylon 5. He's a good actor. Or Beau Bridges, and it's always somebody like that where you're like, wow, you're a little too good to be making these kind of terrible, crappy B movies. Like, and we're not talking B movies, like B TV movies. They have terribly written scripts. The dialogue is always very fluffy, and they talk a little too much. There's not a whole lot of show don't tell, which is what you're making a movie. You're supposed to show me the visual medium of the movie, but they do stuff to try to play to the lowest common denominator. So it's like, can you understand the English language? Then we'll make this movie for you. Like, there's no way that, like, I've started watching because I know my grandmother on my mom's side, she has the beginnings of dementia, and she has trouble retaining what she's seeing on TV or understanding the plots of scripts. We'll watch a TV show, and it could be something like, she's usually okay with things like criminal shows like Blue Bloods or Law and Order or something. But if you watch like a mystery movie, which she loves crime movies, if you watch those, about 10 minutes in, and then every 20 or 30 minutes ago, she'll turn and say, I don't know what's going on, or who's that person. And it becomes like something that you or I would take for granted. It becomes too difficult for her to follow. So turns out I saw her watching a couple of these movies when they were airing. I think they weren't on Hallmark. They were on, I think it was CHCH or CTV or something in the afternoon, because they'll show these kind of movies in reruns or throw them up as a movie of the week or movie of the day. And she watched it. She understood everything that was happening. And I realized it, in some cases, in her case, the way that they tell the script, lots of talking back and forth, very, not obviously like explaining who the murderer is right away. Like you don't. They put in lots of people that it could be, but they present the show in such a way that it's almost impossible not to be able to follow it very simply. And I'm like, so in her case, it's perfect. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll watch some of these and catch up so that she and I can talk about it, because she likes watching those. And I watched a couple, and oh boy, I couldn't look away because they're so bad, but they're also somewhat enthralling. Like, what did I watch? I watched one that was Matchmaker Mysteries with Danica McKellar and Bruce Boxleitner and what's his name? Victor something or other. The guy from Mutant X that plays the main good guy mutant, and he was also in Continuum. I just remember him because in one of the bloopers, one of the DVDs, one of the bloopers, he got a boner in the scene, and it was just hilarious, and they had to cut and everything. So that's what I always remember that guy from. Sorry, dude. But they were solving, like, it was so dumb. It was they solved the murder, and the way all the actors and actresses in this are all good actors, yet they put in these terrible performances, and I'm like, no, it's not that. And then I realized something. It's part of it is the script. I think they're only getting one or maybe two takes for every single thing they shoot. It's not shot like a soap opera, in that a soap opera is a lot of long shots in a single space, and they film at a higher frame rate so it gets that soap opera look. It's just that it's almost like they're shooting and they're like, all right, move on to the next scene, move on to the next scene. I think they might have like 4-day shoots, or maybe a week, for a whole 90-minute movie instead of several weeks, right? So I was like, okay, maybe that's how they can punch through them and get them out so quickly. Because then I watched another one, which was Flower Shop Mysteries, I think it was. And that one was with Brooke Shields. I don't know who the guy playing the hunky cop was. But the father in this one was Beau Bridges. And they're solving a murder and yada, yada, yada. And then what made me think of that one take thing is I ended up having to rewind it, because they're in a car and you distinctly hear the camera operator cough. Not the two people in the front seats. You hear the camera operator cough, and you very briefly, for like half a frame, or maybe half a second, see the camera shake when he coughs. And it's a deep, like, baritone cough, and they just moved on to the next scene. And I'm like, they either didn't catch that or didn't care. But like, my brain, being so attuned to reviewing and watching films, sees those things and loves them. So that made me respect it even more, because I'm like, oh, it's not necessarily that they're all terrible production people. It's that they have such a tight budget, they have to go through this in a split second. And it's all right, scene, done. Like, they must be making these movies for like $2 million for an entire movie, which is like half of what you'd get for a regular TV episode nowadays. But they're getting them out, and they're competent, and they work, and they end on weird like notes. It's like the classic everybody's laughing thing, and it'll go on to the credits. It's weird, but I'm enjoying them, and I'm probably going to watch like 30 more of them over the next few weeks, because there's nothing else to do, and it's an untapped entire world. It's not like those Christmas movies that are just basically like soccer mom porn. This is more like, just put it on the background and you have something that you can watch. Only in my case, I can't keep my eyes off of it. So maybe it's because I'm so used to seeing good stuff that every once in a while I have to see terrible stuff. But that's pretty much what I've been watching. As far as what I've been playing, other than the reviews that are coming up in this episode, which are B Team, Path of the Warrior. We've got Shantae, and we have Traffic Jams. A bunch of VR stuff. I have other VR stuff coming in the mail, some accessories to look at, and maybe even some VR prescription lenses, which will be interesting. I'll talk about that when that arrives. But I've also got Synth Riders to look at. That's going to be probably reviewed next week. Just depends. I want to get through all the different music in it. But what came in is Atelier Mystery Trilogy DX, which is on the PS4. We also received Poison Control on the PS4 to check out. And then we've also got, what else? A few other VR titles, like I said. Big one being the brand new and title that we've actually been looking for quite some time. I know Birdman was interested in it. That's one of the reasons he considered getting an Oculus entirely back like a year ago, and that is Wraith the Oblivion Afterlife, based on the World of Darkness games. And they sent me a code and said, okay, we suggest that you play with headphones on and volume turned to the max if you can. These people don't know me yet, but that's how you kill Alex. I can't do scary games very well to begin with when it's on a regular TV far away with headphones on, let alone VR. So I'll try it a bit, but if it gets too scary, and it will, this is going to be one of those games where I end up having to unplug it and just have the audio coming out of the headset, and I'm going to be on edge. I can't play it at night. It'll have to be a play it after I have a coffee in the morning sort of thing. But yeah, that's what's sort of coming up there. And I'll talk about what shows are going to be released over the next week at the end when we come in for the outro. So I would say right now we're going to send it over to a dual release review from Twisted Pixel Studios of B Team and Path of the Warrior on the Oculus Quest platform.
Basically using geeks.
Leave me alone, geek boy.
Holy shit, you geeks are badass.
Alex here with a quick 1-2 punch of 2 titles sent to us for review from Twisted Pixel, makers of Oculus and other VR titles. So, this being the first couple of weeks since we've had access to VR headset capabilities, we wanted to sort of branch out and see what we could review and cover. And the 2 titles that Twisted Pixel has made for the Oculus platform, the Oculus Quest platform specifically, B Team and Path of the Warrior, came in for us to check out. And I've had pretty much ample time now to play both and get a feel for just the overall experience of each. I'll start with B Team quickly. B Team is a mishmash of gameplay styles. It's at once a 3D virtual runner style, where you're on rails and you're switching between characters using different powers to defeat different obstacles while collecting medals to unlock upgrades and visual aesthetics and changes and costumes for your characters. There's also like a shooting gallery mode, a bunch of other mini games. There's a lot to do with this, and then at certain points you can help generals or free people from certain missions, and they happen to be for any of our listeners that know and love B movies like we do. Some of the biggest, I'm going to say in quotes, stars of the 80s and early 90s, 80s theatrical films, 90s direct-to-video stuff like Michael Dudikoff, Cynthia Rothrock, and so on and so forth. It is fun seeing homages to that. There are lots of little Easter eggs put in for just the geeks out there that might catch little references to some major movies, but also a lot of B movies or nerd tropes. Like there's a part in the game where you're sort of holding up a decoy when you're being targeted, and the decoy is wearing like a Star Trek red shirt from the original series. So it's always neat when they have stuff like that in it. As far as playability goes, you can play it standing up, you can play it sitting down. It's a little easier probably standing, just for freedom of movement, or if you have like a chair that can swivel and stuff, that would be good too. It is a game where I was like, hey, let's see if I can try it while I'm like laying in bed. Little difficult in some parts to do that unless you're really, propped up, elevated. But good music, really good quirky comedy, the voice acting, the whole characters, the frame rate is pretty optimal. You don't move super duper fast for what I would expect a runner to be, but that's probably to keep in line with keeping the frame rate up at the same time as also not giving any motion sickness or anything that can be associated for some people when they play VR titles. Very well put together, tons of fun, tons of variety. Like, I mean, we're talking at least a dozen hours to unlock everything, and just once you've beat every level in a certain path, you can do like unlimited or like forever runs where it's like it'll keep going, and you can come back and play things over and over again without feeling bored, which is great. Now, moving on to Path of the Warrior, this is basically Streets of Rage or Final Fight, but done in the first-person VR realm, which is cool. Like the faces of the characters deform when you punch them and kick them. It's got that very big, over-the-top 80s neon, early 90s Super Nintendo Genesis feel, just expanded into the 3D world of I guess it's a beat 'em up, but you're moved forward by moving your analog stick on your left controller, and you're still punching by physically pressing buttons and holding them down and moving forward to punch. I had to be careful because I actually punched my monitor. It's one of the first games I played in VR, so I guess that's understandable. But you can punch, you can kick, you can do a spin kick to make enemies sort of fly away from you. That's the one that feels a little more unrealistic, but everything else seems to feel pretty spot on. The gameplay loop in this game is you're in a level, you beat up a bunch of enemies, it shows you a counter of how many you've beat for that checkpoint, and after you beat a tougher enemy at the end of that, of beating the rest, you then have to go around into the environment, find where there's a person hidden with a bomb or something on them, and you kick it open or punch it open, defuse the bomb, get rid of it, and then move on to the next chapter, and then so on and so forth. It is fun. You can, if you're playing for a long period of time, get pretty sweaty because you are doing a lot of physical movement, obviously, so you can get a bit of a cardio workout with this if you're punching well good enough. The collision detection is pretty good. I would say better than what I was expecting for a VR title. There's lots of little things too, like enemies don't just spawn out of nowhere. They like open up hatches in the ceiling and climb in, so there's a lot of attention to detail there, and a lot of the parts of the levels are interactive too. So if you see a punching bag or something, you can actually punch it, and it has proper physics associated. So it's not just window dressing. So it's kind of neat. You can pick up weapons and not just like hit with like a hammer or like a knife. You can slash or you can throw weapons at people. People do sliding moves into you. You can uppercut. You can change the angle of your punches to do different damage. It's pretty sweet. I would say if you're a fan of that retro beat 'em up game, but you wanted to play it more like a virtual boxing game mixed with like the 90s beat 'em ups, that's sort of the feel you get from this. And they're both worth playing for sure. I would say Path of the Warrior, you are going to have to be more physical with it because you are going to be doing a lot more movements and dodging and turning around and doing stuff. And if you are somebody who just wants to do like a pick up and play, because the levels can be a little longer to beat in Path of the Warrior. If you're looking for something you can pick up and play like 10 minutes at a time, just quick jolts, that's definitely going to be B Team for you, but they're both worth picking up. I'll put links in the description so you can check out where to get them on Oculus's website, and they're just very high quality games, and I can't wait to see what Twisted Pixels has coming out next.
The Prime Minister of Sweden visited Washington today, and my tiny little nipples went to France.
Gossip, rumors, panic in the streets. We're lucky.
This Week in Geek
News.
It's news time. So what did Birdman grab for us this week? 3 stories here. The first one is brought to us by comicbook.com. We've got Spider-Man No Way Home will feature de-aged Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus. I know that he had been rumored to be in it, and eventually I think he, last week or a couple weeks ago, admitted to being in the film because people had already spotted him on set. But here's what it has to say on the news article. A digital de-aging process will shave more than 15 years off Alfred Molina when the 67-year-old actor reprises his role as Doc Ock for the first time since 2004 Spider-Man 2. It says here, using digital technologies Marvel Studios employed to depict a younger Tony Stark in Captain America Civil War and an aged-down Nick Fury in Captain Marvel, Sony and Marvel will recreate Molina's 2004 look for Doc Ock returns in Spider-Man No Way Home. Set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe circa 2024, the John Watts-directed No Way Home seemingly retcons Ock's 2004 death when the new film picks up where Molina's story ended in Spider-Man 2. Returning as the infamous Marvel villain, it was wonderful, Molina told Variety. It was very interesting to go back after 17 years to play the same role, given that in the intervening years, I have 2 chins, a waddle, crow's feet, and a slightly dodgy lower back. Recalling an early conversation with Watts, Molina asked the Spider-Man director about bringing back Otto Octavius 20 years after his death with an actor who has aged in the last 17 years. He just looked at me and said, "Do you see what we did with Bob Downey Jr. and Sam Jackson?" Molina said with a laugh, referencing Martin Scorsese's The Irishman. Molina added, "They made Robert De Niro's face younger, but when he was fighting, he looked like an older guy. He looked like an old guy. That's what worried me about doing this again. Though computers and digital makeup can make the actor appear younger," Molina pointed out, "I don't have the same physicality that I had 17 years ago, and that's just a fact." Well, yeah, it makes sense. He was 50 when he filmed the last one, and I mean, he had been pudgy or heftier since his like early 30s. He had been a little heavier because if you go back to like 80s Indiana Jones era when he was a young actor, he was a thin guy. He looked very different as he got heavier when he got older. But at 50, you can still move around with weight, but he's a little heavier now. And at nearly 70, it gets to the point where it's like, yeah, you're not going to present the same way. There's a bigger difference between 67 or 68 and 50 than there would be between, let's say, like 37 or 34 and 50. If he was in his mid-30s and then was it like 50, they could do some, the makeup effects, and he could probably still move around pretty good. But, your joints and everything start to seize up on you. And he was right. In watching The Irishman, whenever they were sitting down or just talking, De Niro, looked quite good. He didn't look like, they said he wanted to make him look like he did when he was in Goodfellas. He didn't look like that. He also didn't quite look. He didn't really look like 2001 De Niro, even like in The Score, because he's a little like they erased some stuff, but you're still a little heavier in the face than he was there. He looked like a hybrid between 1995's like 95-96 era where he did like Casino and Heat, and something around 2006-ish. So they de-aged him 15-ish years, but said it was supposed to be 25. And again, when he was sitting there straight on with the right camera angles and everything, it looked perfect. But the second he went to move, you're like, it took you a little bit out of it. Like, he's supposed to be in his 30s or 40s at one point when he goes and beats up a store clerk for hitting his daughter, and he curb stomps him and does some pretty brutal kicks to him. But when he does it, it looked odd because he was so stiff. Like, his back couldn't bend the same way. He lifted his leg, and it didn't really bend the way it should. His arm was sort of tucked at his side. There just wasn't the range of motion. Yeah, he was still intimidating, and it looked believable, but it wasn't believable at his age. Like, if you were saying that he was, Like, he did a good job of taking his age from like 75 and behaving like he was 55 or 60, not like he was 40. So I can understand where he's, Molina's afraid with this. But continuing on, he says, my basic physical move is Doc Ock. Oh, wait, sorry, here we go. Whether or not Molina's Doc Ock grapples with a middle-aged Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, when he enters the universe home to a teenage Spidey, Molina was relieved by a realization that, in quotes, the tentacles that do all the work. He said, my basic physical move as Doc Ock, as the actor, is just this. And he stared menacingly at the interviewer. He said, I do a lot of that, and the arms are all doing all kinds of killing and smashing and breaking. I'm just, with the kind of mean look on my face. It's fantastic. So basically what he's saying is it's true. As long as he has a menacing look, like he's all there, like, his eyes can have that sharp look and he can have a sneer or a menacing face, he could be 87. He doesn't have to be 67, and he could still play Doc Ock, because as long as you can sit up straight or at least stand so that they can do some digital modeling of you, he can pretty much do anything. And as long as he can talk, if he doesn't lose his menacing, booming voice, and he can still stare and have his face emote everything, it's the kind of character he could play in. Like, they could call him back in 20 years, and he could do it as an older version. I mean, obviously, when you're 87, they're not going to make you look like you're 50 anymore, but they could make him look 67, maybe. Or who knows? In 20 years, we don't know what the technology is going to be like. So I think that's really cool. I'm really hyped to see what this turns out like. Does it say when it's coming out yet? I know December 17th. That makes sense. That'll be out. I mean, we should be all vaccinated by then, Canada even. But yeah, that's definitely going to be a theatrical movie I have to go see. Now, I wonder if they're going to de-age anybody else if they have them show up, because they have Doc Ock, but like, would Defoe show up or do something maybe? Who knows? They can retcon anything. It's a comic book, right? So our next story here is brought to us from Superhero Hype, and Birdman grabbed this. Amazon's Lord of the Rings series will cost $465 million for one season. Good God. When I looked up earlier, I remember reading that Amazon's Lord of the Rings MMO, they canceled that, but I guess they're still going all in with the show. This is something that, hasn't it been like 10 years in development? So at $465 million, that's more money than I think the original trilogy cost. And that's including all the stuff they shot for when they made the extended cuts. So let's see here. Who said Middle-earth's real estate was cheap? Amazon was already expecting to spend a great deal of money on their highly anticipated Lord of the Rings series, but the budgets for its first season alone dwarfs many big-budget blockbusters. According to the Hollywood Reporter, the initial batch of episodes will cost 650 New Zealand dollars, which translates to 465 million US, so somewhere in the realm of 500 to 550 Canadian million. So it's a lot of money. Amazon hasn't exactly been shy about what it plans to deliver: the next Game of Thrones to small screens everywhere. And given the popularity of the Lord of the Rings brand, Amazon executives probably feel the number of people watching will justify its exorbitant price tag. Amazon previously spent $250 million in 2017 just to secure the rights to his beloved fantasy stories. So that's not even the production; that's just to get it. This is like $1 billion project. The initial deal also guaranteed a 5-season commitment to the series. So they got to make 5 seasons. They have to make 5 seasons, plus a potential spinoff. The entire package is estimated to be worth at least $1 billion. It's got to be more than that now. It says Stuff, a New Zealand publication, was the first outlet to report on the season's budget thanks to the country's Official Information Act. New Zealand Minister for Economic Development and Tourism, Stuart Nash, also discussed the series while speaking with Morning Report. During the interview, he claimed that Lord of the Rings will be the largest television series ever made. For comparison, the final season of Game of Thrones had a budget of $15 million per episode. So that was what? How many? Was it 8 or 7 that they did? Game of Thrones. I'm pretty sure they split it. They did something weird with it now, right? It was 6. Question, that was 7 and 8 were split because it was supposed to be more or less. I don't know, whatever. So it was 15. Yeah, I can see that because they did film a lot of on location too. So it was a $90 million. Let's round it up. So they've paid $100 million for a season. An average show nowadays, you'd be surprised, is about $50 million. Even for a show like, I think it's like $75 million for like a NCIS because they do like 22 or 25 episodes, and the production budgets just have gone up because they still film in the States. Any of the police shows that film in Canada that are actually like, for American channels, you can basically cut that budget in half. So I still think like an American show produced in Canada that has 22 episodes of a season can get by with about a $25 to $30 million budget because they get tax incentives and all that kind of crap. But an average show now is anywhere from 50 to 75 million a season for a full 22 episode season. I don't. How many episodes is this going to have though? It says here. So that was $50 million per episode. Surprisingly, not even the classic Lord of the Rings series had a budget as high as the upcoming show. New Line Cinema spent less than $100 million for each entry. However, Warner Brothers was willing to spend more on the Hobbit trilogy, which reportedly cost $745 million. That's because they went digital for a lot. Jackson's initial one, they were smart in that they built a lot of the money went into pre-production of those bigger miniature sets, right? So it was the fact that they did it in CGI. They did it at 48 frames per second, which was odd. It wasn't like the 30 or 60 that they do for some of the high refresh rate or high frame rate shows now. But it was at 48. It took more rendering and all this. I understand why that was more expensive. It says here, The Lord of the Rings is currently filming in New Zealand and will hit Amazon Prime later this year. I have to see right now exactly how many episodes they're thinking the first season is going to be, because I know that they're using like economies of scale to scale it up. So this first season is going to probably cost the most out of all of them because they're building their world and assets. So it says here 5 seasons for the deal, formal green light. So I believe the first season of the series is supposed to consist of 20. November officially ordered a second season and scheduled a longer than usual 4 or 5 month production break after completion of the first 2 episodes. This was to allow all the footage of the first episodes to be reviewed. The series could be reviewed in January. Announced that the first season, 8 episodes. Okay, so for okay, so 465 million divided by 8. That is just a little over 58 million per hour of television. So yeah, that's gonna. I mean, I hope that they're using practical effects for a lot of things too, because if the CG doesn't hold up, people are going to be mad that it costs that much, and they could have spent that money on other shows that Amazon like canceled or moved around. Like, why don't they give that kind of a budget to a show like The Expanse? Why don't they give that kind of budget to a show? Why didn't like a single episode's budget of this could have funded 2 to 3 seasons of the severely underrated Jean-Claude Van Damme show, Jean-Claude Van Johnson. That was hilarious. And it got its 1 season order, and then that was it. So it's too bad. But that's going to be interesting to see. I'm assuming they're going to launch it around Christmas time. That would make sense to me. You know, compete with like what would be normally going to theater sort of thing. And our final story here of the regular news is Birdman grabbed this from comicbook.com as well. Square Enix denies being up for sale. And this has sort of been circling the discussion on a lot of YouTube channels too. It says here, reports circulating this week suggest that Square Enix was up for sale with multiple buyers supposedly interested in purchasing the massive gaming company, but it appears that is not the case. Square Enix, the creators of the Final Fantasy games Marvel's Avengers, and much more, issued a statement saying it was not considering selling off any part of its company, nor has it received offers from other parties to acquire parts of Square Enix. I call bullshit, and I'll talk about that after. The reports from Bloomberg Japan prompted the rebuttal of Square Enix shared on Friday. Square Enix's statement said in today's media coverage was shared on social media as well as the company's site with a brief message from the company addressing the situation. It refuted the claims of others expressing interest in buying Square Enix, and that said that the publisher has no plans to pursue these kinds of ideas. Bloomberg has reported today that there is interest from several buyers to acquire Square Enix. This was the quote. The statement from the company began, however, this report is not based on any announcement by Square Enix Holdings Limited. We do not consider selling off the company or any part of its business, nor have we received any offer from a third party to acquire company or any part of its business. Bloomberg's report cited officials who were said to be familiar with the matter, though it was unclear at the time whether the interest expressed in Square Enix dealt solely with the company's gaming interests or rather the company as a whole. It seemed that point is moot now, however, assuming Square Enix statement is truthful and there's been no discussions of selling off parts of the company or the company as a whole. Square Enix stock did benefit from the rumors regarding the company's stock prices rising considerably amid acquisition rumors. The idea of Square Enix purchased by a company would have been laughable a few years ago, considering how big the publisher is. But as we've seen from Microsoft's Bethesda acquisition, anything is possible. Bethesda, the creators of the Fallout, the Elder Scrolls series, as well as numerous other projects like the upcoming Deathloop, it's a sizable and well-known company on its own, but they were still acquired by Microsoft. Acquiring Square Enix would be a huge boon for any company like Sony or Microsoft, but it looks like the publisher isn't interested in that sort of change right now. So what did I mean by I call bullshit on it? I have been through a couple company acquisitions. One that is very typical of how companies do business. We actually even had a Japanese investment group come in and look at the company at one point, and they didn't go with it, but it was another company. Anyway, so without going into details, because I don't know what I can say particularly. I mean, I've been out of there long enough, but I wouldn't want to say anything that somebody would be mad at. But generally, you will deny, like your company will deny everything, deny even being on the market until the sale is through, and not only has it been approved, but it's been vetted for legal issues, and you're signing on the dot. Like, we're not talking handshakes, we're talking everything is done. Usually, they don't even announce it till the deal's already been over. Like, so in how the company I worked for was done, like we knew internally, couldn't say anything, but we knew internally that they were on the market to sell several months before even finding a buyer or anything like that. And it can be a little different if you're the company seeking out somebody else, giving a proposition for it. But generally, a company will come and either offer you the money or want to buy in, or you'll go on the market to look, and you'll sort of send feelers out, and it'll all be non-disclosure. Like even to have a meeting, it's like you got to sign a paper saying we're not going to talk about it, what we discussed here, sort of thing. And so several months before we even sold, we knew we were going to be sold, but we couldn't say anything. Then the deal was signed. We knew that we were being taken over, and they didn't announce it then, and they denied that anything was happening. And even though, you don't have to tell the truth. Like when you're being bought out or buying a company, you don't have to tell the truth until the papers are signed and it's done. In fact, that could damage things by altering things. You could affect the market just by saying you're interested. Like, that's a stupid move. And why anybody would think that they would openly admit it until the deal is done, is doesn't understand how business works. And it's just, and you can argue all you want, but that's just not how business works. So, company was bought, and then I think we were already operating internally as a different company, but we were facing the outside world as another. And then once all the legal stuff came through, they were announced. So like the company was already not only bought, but completely different, but to the outside world. And if a customer called or if anything, you would pretend to be somebody else, because it's what you do until the legal department and the PR teams are on board and they say, yeah, it's okay to change. And then it's like a light switch goes off and it's a completely different thing. And then the whole machine starts moving. So I don't doubt that they've been in contact. I severely doubt. There's a few things that could be here. I severely doubt that it would be Microsoft, or I would think it'd be hilarious if Apple bought them, but it won't be a Western company. If it's a full acquisition of the company, absolutely not. It can't, because there are actual laws in place that they say it's very hard, but it's near and pretty much, I would say 99% almost impossible. You cannot purchase, a foreign power cannot own a Japanese corporation. Especially one that was started in Japan. If it's one that was like an American company that then started incorporated a new version in Japan, and they switched over ownership, and then maybe the American company bought the company back, there might be ways to do that. But if it's a Japanese company started in Japan by Japanese businessmen, you cannot buy it as a foreigner. Just can't do it. Period. What you could do is you could buy a division or buy the intellectual properties, buy the assets, but that company still operates as its own, and then start your own company in Japan. So somebody like a Microsoft could go to them and say, we want to buy the Final Fantasy brand completely right out from you. And they'd be like, well, no, we're not going to do that. It's our bread and butter. That's what makes us money. And they're like, we'll give you $7 billion or $10 billion for Final Fantasy alone. And then what they would have to do is they could say, oh, you own it, and then they could have them be the development team that makes it, but they would still not be owned. Square wouldn't be owned by Microsoft. But what Microsoft could do is then go, okay, we're going to open up Microsoft Studios Tokyo and hire a whole bunch of people that leave Square and buy the property and then transfer it that way. But it still wouldn't mean that Square Enix is owned by Microsoft. Nintendo wouldn't buy them because while they probably have the money or they could work it out, it's not in their wheelhouse. To be honest, their systems aren't powerful enough to play the games. And it would be a regression, and it would actually lower the value of the Final Fantasy brand if Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest maybe, they could buy if they were willing to sell things off, I could see Nintendo buying the Dragon Quest brand. And then I could see, somebody else like Sony or somebody buying the Final Fantasy, and then the many, many other franchises and assets they own. I could see Microsoft, would be more likely. I could see Microsoft purchasing Crystal Dynamics, grabbing them and saying, okay, we now own Tomb Raider. I could totally see that happening. Or I could see them picking up another franchise like, hey, we want the studio, I can't remember what it is. Is it Avalanche? Or somebody? Whomever it is that makes the Just Cause series, they could grab them. So there's a few different ways they could go about that. The only company I could see, well, there's a couple. I could see a big Japanese corporation like Toyota's parent company, or I could see Panasonic. It used to be like the Matsushita Corporation. I think they just rebranded as Panasonic. I could see them buying them if they wanted to get back into the gaming realm. But really, it's only Sony. Sony is the only one that could completely purchase Square Enix there as an entire company, because they are Japanese based. They have the money. They would want to buy them and make their games exclusive. They already have timed exclusive deals for some of their stuff, but they got to be pissed that some of the games are going to Game Pass, and they've lost the whole baseball thing right now, right? So I could see Sony going to their shareholders and saying, let's make a play. Let's grab the largest and most respected Japanese developer that's not us. Because Konami's fallen far, and people are like, well, why didn't they pick up Konami? It's probably not worth it. They might be worth just picking up their individual franchises. They can't get Namco because of the Bandai connection. Like, they're too, over here we see them just as mostly a game company, and then the anime realm, people see the collectors and they buy the Gundams and all. But in Japan, Bandai Namco is too integrated into other fields. They wouldn't be able to sell their gaming division or purchase it from them. So even though they're probably Namco Bandai on the same scale as far as, I would say, as big of a company as Square Enix, they just don't have the prestige, I think, for their titles. So I could see either Sony buying them, or I could see a division of Square being bought, specifically the Western games, if they really wanted that. But it'll be interesting to see. I'm assuming we'd find out in the next few months. It would probably be something they would want to announce if it was a Microsoft acquisition or something, or a Sony one. We'd want to hear it around E3, and it would just be like blowing everybody's mind. So we'll see about that, when it comes time. But yeah, I call complete bullshit on them saying no, because I know how acquisitions work, and I know how this sort of thing works. And the fact that their stocks went up when the announcement came that people were saying that they were going to be bought means that there is shareholders they have to know that there's not a lot of public faith in how they've been running things. Yes, Final Fantasy VII remake did fine, but there's been a lot of mismanagement of projects, and they got lucky that a few of the most recent ones hit well. Because, and by a few, I mean some of their medium and smaller budget titles have hit well. And Final Fantasy VII, if Final Fantasy VII Remake was not a success, we would see them probably going bankrupt because of how poor most of their other games have been performing in relation to their gigantic, inflated, multi-$100 million budgets. So there's got to be some stuff. And then 16 would be maybe their last hope to try to put something out. But we'll see. So that's going to do it for the news. We're going to take a quick break here and go into our next review. And then when we're back, we'll get in with the weird news, and we'll see what Birdman has for us there.
This is a fair request, and I promise I will not judge any person only as a teenager, and that this is no more right than saying all teenagers are drunken dope addicts or glue sniffers.
The other day, I opened up my inbox and found a friendly email from Way Forward. They had sent over a copy of Shantae, the original Game Boy Color version, available on Switch, and I wasn't expecting it. And they said, "Hey, if you'd like to check this out, we've done some of these before where they've remastered and put them out on the Switch." And they said, "Hey, would you like to check it out?" Absolutely, because the Shantae series has been getting a lot of love lately, and I know that the Game Boy Color game was a very late game in the release life of the system, and also it's one of the more rare ones. Like, we're talking, I think, at least in Canadian dollars, a few hundred, maybe even more now, which is great for collectors, but for people that just want to play, and can't afford it, that's not necessarily great. Well, this is a good option here. So I went and downloaded it. It's only a couple hundred megabytes to download, so I was like, okay, is it just the ROM with a emulator included? I thought that was the case at first, but it appears to be more that they've re-engineered some aspects of it, at least. Now, it originally came out in 2002, and interesting with this is you get a couple versions. So it is the original 8-bit version available on Switch. There are things like saving, quick saves, that sort of stuff. You can switch between the Game Boy Color mode or a Game Boy Advanced Enhanced mode, which has a bonus Tinkerbat transformation. So switching between them, the Game Boy Color mode looks very bright and vibrant and very sharp with the pixelation of the pixel art. The Game Boy Advance looks a little softer, with obviously a better color palette, slightly different resolution, how it shapes up. But it's really neat they included both here, as well as obviously the Tinkerbat transformation. Now, they've added save states, as I said. There's multiple display options for, do you want it stretched? Do you want it full? Do you want yada, yada, yada? The controls have been tightened up. It apparently feels... I've never played the original version, so I can't tell. But apparently it's supposed to be just better timings and less latency. And there's an art gallery included, which is pretty sweet, too. The cool part about all this is they released it at the $10 MSRP price point in the States. So we're looking at, 14 Canadian, something like that, which is pretty damn good. I know Shantae fans are going to be very happy about this because, one, it's a small download. Two, Way Forward has handled a fantastic port. There was no frame rate issues. The thing loads fast. The colors are great. The music is great. There's no glitches that I encountered. You get 2 versions of the game, in one pack, and you get a bunch of extras. It's kind of a no-brainer. You're going to want to go pick it up.
Go crazy?
Don't mind if I do!
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria!
And it's time for the weird news. We've got 3 stories here for you today. I think 1 or 2 of them Birdman got. I grabbed the last one here. So the first one is from NPR. It says here, scientists create early embryos that are part human, part monkey. So, okay. It says, for the first time, scientists have created embryos that are a mix of human and monkey cells. The embryos, described Thursday in the journal Cell, were created in part to try and find new ways to produce organs for people who need transplants and the international team of scientists who collaborated in the work. But the research raises a variety of concerns. And it says here, my first question is, why? Said Kirsten Matthews, a fellow for science and technology at Rice University's Baker Institute. I think the public is going to be concerned, and I am as well, that we are just kind of pushing forward with science without having a proper conversation about what we should or should not do. Still, the scientists who conducted research and some other bioethicist, there's a word for you, bioethicist, defended the experiment. This is one of the major problems of medicine, organ transplantation, said Juan Carlos Isbisua Belmonte. Isbisua Belmonte, that's a cool name. A professor in the Gene Expression Laboratory of the Salk Institute for Biological Sciences in La Jolla, California, and a co-author of the Cell Study. The demand for that is much higher than the supply. I don't see this type of research being ethically problematic, said In-Soo Hyun, a bioethicist at Case Western Reserve University and Harvard University. It's aimed at a lofty humanitarian goal. Thousands of people die every year in the United States waiting for an organ transplant. So in recent years, some researchers in the U.S. and beyond have been injecting human stem cells into sheep and pig embryos to see if they might actually grow human organs in such animals for transplantation. Oh, God. This is how you get man-bear-pig, by the way. But so far, that approach hasn't worked. So Belmonte teamed up with scientists in China and elsewhere to try something different. The researchers injected 25 cells known as induced pluripotent stem cells from humans, commonly called iPS cells, into embryos from macaque monkeys, which are much more closely genetically related to humans than are sheep and pigs. After 1 day, the researchers reported they were able to detect human cells growing in 132 of the embryos that were able to study the embryos for up to 19 days. That enabled the scientists to learn more about how animal cells and human cells communicate, an important step towards eventually helping researchers find new ways to grow organs for transplants in other animals. This knowledge will allow us to go and try to re-engineer the pathways that are successful for allowing appropriate development of human cells in these other animals. Belmonte told NPR, "We're very, very excited. Such mixed species embryos are known as chimeras, named after the fire-breathing creature from Greek mythology that is part lion, part goat, and part snake. Our goal is not to generate any new organism or any monster," Belmonte said, "and we are not doing anything like that. We are trying to understand how cells from different organisms communicate with one another." I get worried about this being like something that could cause like another pandemic. In addition, Belmonte said he hopes this kind of work will lead to new insights into early human development, aging, and the underlying causes of cancer and other disease. Some other scientists NPR spoke with agree with the research could be useful. This work is an important step that provides very compelling evidence that someday when we will understand fully what the process is, we can make them develop into a heart or kidney or lungs, said Dr. Jeffrey Platt, a professor of microbiology and immunology at the University of Michigan, who is doing related experiments, but was not involved with this new research. But this type of scientific work and the possibilities it opens up raises serious questions for some ethicists. The biggest concern, they said, is that someone could try to take this work further and attempt to make a baby out of an embryo inside of, or made this way. Specifically, the critics worry that human cells could be part of the developing brain of such an embryo and of the brain of the resulting animal. This is how you get Planet of the Apes, is what they're saying. Should it be regulated as human because it has a significant proportion of human cells in it, or should it be regulated just as an animal or something else? Rice University's Matthew said, at what point are you taking something and using it for organs that it will actually start to think and have logic? Another concern is that human cells in this way could produce animals that have a human sperm or eggs. Nobody really wants monkeys walking around with human eggs and human sperm inside of them. Said Hank Greeley, a Stanford University bioethicist who wrote the article of the same issue of the journal that critiques the lines of research while noting that the particular study was ethically done. Because if a monkey with human sperm cells meets a monkey with human eggs, nobody wants a human embryo inside of a monkey's uterus. Belmonte acknowledges the ethical concerns, but the stresses that this team has no intention of trying to create animals with the part human, part monkey embryos, or even try to grow human organs in such a way closely related to species. He and his team consulted closely with bioethicists, including Greeley. Greeley said he hopes the work will spur a more general debate about how far scientists should be allowed to go with this kind of research. I don't think we're on the edge of beyond the Planet of the Apes. I think rogue scientists are few and far in between, but they're not zero, Greeley said. So I do think it's an appropriate time for us to start thinking about, should we ever let these go beyond a petri dish? For several years, the National Institute of Health has been weighing the idea of lifting a ban on funding this kind of research, but that has been waiting for new guidelines, which are expected to come out next month from the International Society of Stem Cell Research. The notion of using organs from animals for transplants has also long raised concerns about spreading viruses from animals to humans, exactly as I said. So if the current research comes to fruition, steps would have to be taken to reduce the infection risk, scientists said, and as carefully as sequestering animals used for that purpose and screening any organs used for transplantation. Good Lord, Michael, why did you give me such a long thing to read? I'll tell you this. Birdman would not have been able to read this with all these long, crazy words and names he can't pronounce, because it's no secret that's Birdman's downfall, is long scientific words and foreign people sounding names. But this is very interesting and scary. I understand the point of it. Now, I would raise the question, which is worse? Would it be worse to do this, genetically growing organs on animals that are for humans, or would it be worse to genetically create from nothing, like create a, like, or from the base materials, create a human ear or something in a lab? Like, one way, if you're a religious person, you're playing God by like creating something from nothing or altering animals, or would it just be better to go and the route of like bionic implants or things like, oh, their ear and hearing doesn't work anymore, so or not, or what's a good example? Be like, oh, your tongue doesn't work anymore, so we're going to put a bionic tongue in your mouth that functions the same and gives you the same senses, and then we hit the singularity where we're no longer human anymore. So there's a lot of crap going on here. Now, the second story here, this is brought to us from Insider.com. It says here, after buying an entire abandoned ghost town in California, a man is stuck out there due to a snowstorm and the coronavirus. It says here, Brent Underwood is living inside what could be mistaken for a Stephen King novel. The story of a caretaker snowed in a place with a long, sordid history of violence could just easily describe The Shining. But unlike Jack Torrance and his family at the Overlook Hotel, Underwood is living alone in an abandoned mining town. Hopefully Underwood's having a much better time, all work and no play. During the early stages of the coronavirus lockdown, Underwood packed up his truck and headed to California. I think I'm taking socially isolating to an extreme, he told Insider. Underwood spoke with the Insider about his experiences in the ghost town and how he's been spending his time. I fell in love with the combination of hospitality and history, he said, who also owns a hostel in Texas that was built in 1892. Underwood was looking for a larger project challenge with his friend showed him Cerro Gordo. Underwood and his business partner purchased the abandoned silver mining town in 2018. I was looking for a challenge, and I certainly got that and more, he said. According to Underwood, the town has a long and bloody history. 5,000 residents were left to their own devices by law enforcement since it's 3 hours outside of Los Angeles. At one point, the town averaged around a murder a week, and the miners used to put sandbags in their bunks to stop stray bullets during the night. Good God. The town usually has a caretaker, Robert Louis Desmarais, who lives on site and oversees the property, but when the coronavirus hit the United States, he wanted to check on his wife. Underwood, who normally lives in Austin, Texas, agreed to take over duties of watching the town. He packed up his truck and drove 24 hours to California in search of adventure. It was fun. I've never taken a long road trip, Underwood said. I figured I would roll in nice trip. I would roll a nice road trip into a little break, and a little break would become a longer break, and I'm okay with that. I'm a Florida boy, so a couple feet of snow to me is something else. He said, the weather outside was a frigid 25 degrees Fahrenheit. When we went up to 4 or 6 feet the banks of the road, it was a recipe for dwindling supplies. There are bullet holes in the walls, blood stains on the floor in the saloon, and a cemetery filled with the graves of hundreds of miners. Underwood said that he finds solace among the remains of the past, giving the current uncertain times. The town has weathered everything and it's been through it, and its 22 buildings are still standing. The people have been going through issues since people exist. People have been going through issues since people existed. Underwood said this town was around when the Spanish influenza hit, and it's still standing. So there's a kind of strength in that. That's kind of neat. I mean, there could be a story told about that. I'm surprised there isn't like a reality TV show about that yet. And our final story here. It says here, this one I found it for Michael. He'll be happy. Birdman, this is for you. This is from MSN.com. Pentagon confirms pyramid-shaped UFO video footage is authentic. A series of newly surfaced images and videos of unidentified flying objects filmed by the U.S. Navy have now been confirmed as authentic by the Pentagon. While many in the public generally refer to such mysterious sightings as UFOs, the more modern term used in defense circles is unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, and something the intelligence community takes very seriously. While UFOs are a stigmatized topic associated with conspiracy theories and intertwined with pop culture, the fact remains that UAPs, sometimes also called anomalous aerial vehicles, or AAVs, are nonetheless very real, representing documented sightings of phenomena that neither the military nor scientific observers can easily identify. The newly surfaced sightings, sourced by filmmaker Jeremy Corbell and reporter George Knapp, included footage of a mysterious pyramid-shaped craft observed flying through the sky, along with images of 3 other objects, one of which appeared to have been shared online last year. While nobody knows for sure what these enigmatic visions really are, the Pentagon has at least confirmed that the images are genuine, authentically photographed and footage UAPs by the U.S. Navy and not been altered. I can confirm that the reference photos and videos were taken by Navy personnel. Pentagon spokesperson Susan Goh said in a statement distributed to numerous varied media outlets. The UAPTF, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, has included these incidents in their ongoing examinations. But while the Pentagon corroborates the authenticity of the imagery, the U.S. Department of Defense hasn't clarified anything further than that, remaining tight-lipped about what, if anything, their investigations of these strange objects might have upturned. As we have said before, to maintain operation security, to avoid disclosing information that may be useful to potential adversaries, DoD does not discuss publicly the details of either observations or examinations of reported incursions into our training ranges, and yada, yada, yada. The article goes on a fair bit longer to sort of talk about different things that I've seen. I will say this, I think on behalf of pretty much everybody, I for one welcome our Gould system lord overlords in their giant pyramid motherships, and we will make sure that we serve them well in the future. So that's going to do it for the weird news. We're going to take a break here, go into the final review of the show, and then we'll come back at the end with sort of an update on what's coming up on the site over the next few days and weeks as far as content goes. And yeah, let's take it away.
Do you have any hobbies?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
Hold that thought. It's crapper time.
Vertigo Games just launched the brand new VR title Traffic Jams, and we got a review copy on the Oculus Quest, and then there's a PC version that I believe auto redeemed when we redeemed the other, so we could play it and see. I didn't notice any big differences playing them locally on the native code for the Oculus or on the PC version, so it's a very well optimized Oculus title. Now, what is Traffic Jams? It's a game where you're playing a traffic cop. So it starts you out with a tutorial, and it's got a cartoony, almost like a Nickelodeon mixed with like an Aardman claymation sort of look. Very, very neat. The characters in the game all speak English, but with like Swedish Chef gibberish sort of, or they'll alter words to make them sound closer to the action they're doing, and they've made up their own sort of amalgamation of English and gibberish together, which is pretty charming overall. I would say I didn't find it too hard to understand, and it's everything is very tongue-in-cheek and very physical comedy oriented, but the game is basically traffic will come either in vehicles like trains or buses, and then you'll also have pedestrians going, and you're at a crossroads, and your job is to raise a hand, left or right, to stop a vehicle from going, to let other people pass, telling other people to go, sort of what you'd see a traffic cop doing when the street lights are out. And if you wait too long to let people go through, they'll get impatient and you'll lose points and drive through if they get mad. People can be hit, there can be accidents, and that will reduce points. You get so many times it'll happen, you'll fail a level sort of thing. And it can be fun to let certain people wait longer and then let a whole bunch of people through. There's different strategies to it, but you're basically figuring out the time and timing of what certain people will be like. They'll show a timer above their head at how impatient they might be so that their timer will go down faster. And you're looking to also get little achievements in each level. It'll check off a checklist of things you've done, and you can repeat and go back and try to get higher scores and unlock little things here and there. Very fun game. You can pick up and play it for about an hour at a time, or even less. You could do like a 10-minute gaming session if you wanted to, or you could do a longer one. You're not going to get overly tired. You will be, lifting your hands a fair bit, so make sure you do some stretches beforehand. But it is a pretty straightforward game that even kids could get into. I can't see any parents being upset with it. It's a wholesome, fun game. It's not going to be anything I think people would object to, and yet it can be fun for the whole family. Doesn't matter your age. I'm in my 30s and I had no trouble playing it, and I didn't get bored of it. In fact, I found myself getting sucked in to play more and more. So it is a good new VR title, very well programmed from what I can see. No glitches, no errors, no obvious optimization issues, frame rate issues. The graphics are smooth and easy on the eyes. I didn't get tired or headaches or anything playing a long period of time. Very well put together, very aesthetically pleasing, and a simple concept that can really only be done in VR to make it fun. And it's just absolutely a very fun, easy to pick up and play title. It's got an MSRP of about $20 US, so 25-ish Canadian that means. And it is a cross-buy, meaning if you pick up the Oculus Quest version in the actual headset, it will give you the PC VR version. So that what you can do is, if you want to connect it to your computer, Sometimes that means you can increase the frame rate or the refresh rate on your headset if you're just doing it in like a tethered mode through Oculus Link, or you can increase resolution or certain settings on the PC. I found the experience to be roughly the same, but you might be able to push it farther than I did and maybe get a more vibrant result. But it plays perfectly well, even in the native version playing wirelessly just built into the headset.
Those magnificent bastards. Color me kooky, but something very odd is going on around here.
You're not allowed to talk anymore.
And that's going to do it for the show this week. What do we have coming up? Well, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to double check right now, but I believe we have another episode of Earth vs. Soup. Let's see here. Scheduled. Yes, it is episode number 5, War of the Worlds, the original 1953 movie, which I actually reviewed. Oh, what is it? It's got to be a few months back now when a Criterion Collection edition came out, and I had a chance to check out that for the first time since I was a little kid seeing it on TV. So that'll be fun to listen to because I know Aaron will have Aaron and Darlene will have great input for that. So that's coming out on Wednesday. I believe there is a Nerd to the Third that I'm going to schedule a syndication episode of. We're going to hear that, I believe, on Friday. I'm going to double check right now again on that. Yep, that one is going to come out on Friday. We've also got, what else in the bag? I've actually edited down and scheduled about 10 more, maybe a little more, 10 more of the Earth versus Soup episodes. We've got the Brain from Planet Eros, Devil Girl from Mars, The Day the World Ended, Robot Monster, the Flight That Disappeared, Journey to the Center of the Earth, Them, Rocket Attack USA, Night of the Blood Beast, The Amazing Transparent Man, They Came from Beyond Space, Tarantula, The Mole People. So up to episode 18. That's been edited and scheduled. And as far as other ones that have coming in, I've been getting 2 or 3 or 4 a week now to work on. We've got, I haven't edited them yet, but that's going to be part of the goal for this week. Going to do probably in chunks of 5 or 10 at a time. And they're probably going to be 2 a week that we'll have them releasing once they start getting scheduled. We got Rocket Ship XM, the Monolith Monsters, Assignment Outer Space, The Last Man on Earth, Time Travelers, The Brain Eaters, Monster on the Campus, Night of the Ghouls, The Creeping Terror, Planet Burr. Those are the ones that I've received so far. And as far as other review items, I did receive a screener copy, so no finished artwork or anything, but a screener copy of Donnie Darko on UHD 4K. So that'll be interesting. I haven't seen that movie since it came out on DVD back in the day. Also, a screener copy of Death Has Blue Eyes on Blu-ray from Arrow Films. And 3 titles from our friends at Vinegar Syndrome and Partners, Fun City Editions, AGFA, and Utopia releasing. That's a Minor Premise, Jungle Trap, and Jeremy. And we'll be going over that. May have some more horror and sci-fi type stuff to talk about. I'm thinking about contacting Aaron, and since Birdman can't do anything, we might record a couple together. I'll put together some. We still have some Vinegar Syndrome releases that we weren't able to get to because of Birdman's illness, where maybe I'll do it with him and we'll discuss them. So expect over the next few weeks probably some more variety of episodes, and I'm going to talk to JT and see what we can do for the next Sunday Funnies episode. And I might be getting some people on if we're going to do a prototype. Maybe I'll do one with Ken or somebody like that. And again, not going to try to overflow everything, but because I'm doing it all solo right now, but we are going to make sure we keep getting content out there, because we're getting to that time of year where it starts to get very interesting on the gaming front, and as movies are going to start coming out again and maybe theaters opening up, probably not in Canada for at least a month, but things are starting to move, and it's going to be very interesting. I would love to talk more anime with Ken, as well as I want to talk more anime with Birdman, get him on board. He's still got to, recuperate and get enough energy to focus for more than a few hours at a time, which it's going to be a long road for him, but he is going to do quite well, and in the long run he'll be happy to return and do a lot more, because he had a lot of plans that he wanted to do and accomplish moving forward, but right now he's going to be on a bit of a hiatus, and then once he's back, maybe I'll get to take a break for a bit. I'll take a few weeks off in the summer like I did last year, but until then, that's it for the show. I will be back, I guess next week. Maybe we'll have a Turner Treasure episode if we have enough review items to come out, because we got a bunch of VR stuff. Oh yeah, so the VR stuff that's coming in the mail, I can confirm it and talk about it, is we have, what is it here? We have a, supposed to be a facial interface and foam replacement set for the Oculus Quest 2. Also a controller grip for the Oculus Quest 2, a head strap replacement, and an XL spacer for glasses. Sort of give you a variety of stuff that VR Cover puts out, and I've looked around, and they're supposed to be one of the best third-party accessory companies for VR headsets, and they have custom stuff for the Oculus. They're also, with their another sister company, they're the ones that are putting together the lenses, and that might be a week or two away to check out. And the idea from there would be, not even with my big giant head, you wouldn't have to put the headset over top of it and have the glasses potentially touch, or have them fog up, or have a double lens, glare issue. The idea is, with those prescription lenses that I didn't know existed, is they're sort of like clip-ons, but on the inside of your headset, like Oculus, or if you have a Valve Index, and you can get them in your prescription put in, and they sort of have a rubberized outer layer that around the rim that you sort of clip into place. And I'll see how clear that is, and if that makes a difference in how things fit on the head, how the seal is for light and everything. It's going to be interesting. So that's coming. We've also got some stuff in the works to come in. There's new products right now coming out from Anchor and Soundcore and some others. We're going to see more as probably closer when we get to the summer, because some of the stuff that was supposed to come out last year is going to be coming out now, as well as we get closer and the shortages of computer chips and everything and silicon get ironed out. We'll start seeing more products come out. Very interested to see what E3, Summer Game Fest, all that stuff holds for us. The only reason we haven't done a prototype has been we've had some press shows and things come up. There just hasn't been anything that was big enough to wow us that we couldn't have talked about in the main show, and something that you want to bounce off somebody else. But if we have more press events, this coming week is an Apple one, and then I think there's an Oculus one this coming week. If the rumored big announcement, there's a rumor going around that the Apple TV is getting revamped with a new edition for the first time since 2017, and that it will be a dedicated gaming console with a controller and everything to really promote Apple Arcade. If that's the case, and the Oculus one comes out, and then we can sort of recap what had happened maybe on the Resident Evil, maybe I'll do one. Probably wouldn't be solo. I'll see if I can pull on somebody to talk about it, because that would be interesting. It's something that we would want to really see, a foreshadow of what the rest of the press conferences are going to be like, and what the shape of the gaming landscape will be over the next few months. But until then, we won't know. I'll know probably next week, and I'll update you on the next show. So that's going to be it. I'm done. I'm going to go watch more of my terrible Hallmark murder mystery shows and eat like a pint of ice cream.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.